today. Ron, I saw you're registered. I wanted to welcome you. It's been a long time since we've caught up. Nice to see you back here. All right, guys. So for those of you who are new, we have a little process that we go through at the start of these webinars, given that the whole purpose of the webinars is about helping people stay in stride with their ID, because that's what, is your best version of yourself. And so I'll just show you the slides. I've got a couple of slides to work through for you today, and we'll get into the discussion. So this is webinar 39 that we started back in March to just, try and do something to help people stay in stride and at their best as we went through what we didn't know. We didn't know the pathway of COVID. We didn't know where it would take people. But I know so many of you have appreciated this opportunity every week to not only learn more about yourself and how to stay in stride, but to collaborate with other people and become quite good friends with each other, even virtually. It's been a really fun thing to experience. I'm sure it has been for me, but I know for many of you as well. And so just to give some context for those who are new, we've had various webinars. Today, you can see down here in the bottom left-hand corner, December 16 and 17, 16 in the US, 17 in Australia, is what we call a public webinar. So this is where we invite everybody that's done their IDs to come along. Then we're going to have a break for Christmas and the New Year, and it's the holiday season in Australia. So this is like the summer break for America. It is our summer. Hopefully this year we won't get, devastated by bushfires. Actually, some of the areas that were devastated last year are now in horrendous floods. It's just crazy how nature spins its trick. But anyway, so we've got a break through until the 20th and 21st of January, when we have another public webinar. And then the following week is when I do my next game changer interview with someone who I'm just so excited to interview, Treven Martinez. Do your research on him if you like, but it's a great story that hasn't been told yet. I'm very much looking forward to that interview at the end of January to well and truly kick the new year into play. So that's our sort of roster of what's coming up. As for today, we do what we call a PPI check-in. So PPI is your peak performance indicator, and we're going to go through and talk about what that means in a minute and where you're at as we come into Christmas. Then I want to talk about the online certification. In fact, I might do that now. So we have been developing an online certification program. We've had an accreditation and certification program quite a few years ago. Some of you, like as far back as Greg, 20 or more years ago, did our accreditation program, others along the way. But we haven't done that for a while. We've used other formats as we've all sort of worked out how to dance with the online format. But I've been looking for a way we can do something much more global and much more virtual, rather than just in California or just in Sydney. And we've developed an online virtually delivered certification program that will be going live in March next year. So if that's of interest to any of you, and it particularly is geared to people that want to either be a certified coach and consultant with ID in their own practices, or even if you're like in a HR role, or even in leadership and you just want to learn a lot more about yourself and how to get the best out of the people that you're working with and leading, that's why it's being developed. And we have another program on leadership that we're developing for a virtual delivery next year as well. But if the certification program is of interest, please reach out to Ian Robertson, who's on the call today. And you can ping him in the chat or reach out to him afterwards, and he can send you the details of that certification program. So then we'll get into the discussion. That's an ID learning discussion. A couple of you have asked questions, which we'll cover in the session. And then I have a discussion point if we have enough time. And then I have a Christmas gift for all of you, which I will mention at the end of the session today. All right. Any questions before we start? Just remember, you might be on mute if you want to ask a question. Okay. So let's talk about the peak performance indicator and where you're at. So for those of you who are new, and I know there are a bunch of you that are new today, the green arrow that runs up the center of the page represents your ID. So that's the way that you've been wired to perform. That's innate to you, instinctive to you. And when you are true to you, that's when you get the very, very best version of yourself. It's also when you're happiest and most fulfilled. People talk about being, or we talk about being in stride. Others talk about being in flow or in the zone, as athletes say. But this is when it's not just that you're at your best. Everything seems easier. Decisions, work, life is easier and more fun. But there are forces in life that pull you off track and compromise you. So we think about, if you're a 10 out of 10, like if being on that green arrow is a 10 out of 10, you're totally in stride, and being pulled right out to the left or right out to the right is like a 1 out of 10. Our question to you today is, what's your number? Where would you be? And if you're struggling to come up with a number, you might say, well, are you up or are you down? You know, are you at a high score or a lower score? But it's interesting for you to just reflect and say, okay, how is life going for me, given COVID, given whatever other challenges are on? And in fact, COVID for many people has turned out to be so much better than what was anticipated. And for others, it clearly has been a disaster, whether that's financially or whether that's health-wise. And even though I know people who have now had COVID and are still unsure of what the longer term ramifications are as they, you know, continue to recover, they're still not there yet. So it's been a really interesting year, but notwithstanding all of that, there's still how you navigate life through all of those challenges. And whether you're a 10 out of 10 and in stride, or whether you're being pulled off track and not having fun and maybe enduring a fair bit of stress. So just think about, what is your number? What comes up for you? And if any of you would like to share, I'm just going to sort of stop and let you share if you've got any comments about what your score is, particularly if you're like a 9 or a 10 and you're like, wow, I'm on fire, and you want to share both what the number is, but also maybe what you've done to get there. Or if you're a particularly low number and you want some help for how you might turn that around, please feel free to share that. It's a very safe group to do that in, and it's been a great resource for many of you in prior weeks. Anyone like to share their number or any context around this?
Oh, I don't know about a number, but as far as how I'm doing with COVID, I'm not going to say I love it, because a lot of people are getting hurt, but I'm going to say for me personally, it's been fine. I like not commuting to work, because I used to have a long commute, at least an hour each way. That's 10 hours of free time back each week. I've been riding my bike a lot. I've been walking the dogs a lot. I see my kids more. As far as I'm concerned, everything's better, to be honest.
Good on you, Kevin. Good on you. That's good to hear. Anyone else? Is there anyone who is a 9 or a 10 today?
I'm chiming in here. This is Gabriella. Can you guys hear me?
We can, Gabriella. Welcome.
Well, cool. This is my third day at Infoblox, and I'm feeling like a 9 or 10, given that I, have now joined a really phenomenal company, and it's really cool that you guys have, programs like this, and you guys talk about this on a broad scale across the organization. So I'm feeling very confident and motivated. So I'd say, yep, a 9 or a 10.
That's awesome. And where are you located?
I'm in Denver, Colorado.
Congratulations. Great part of the world. Well, you've got every right to be a 9 or a 10. You have indeed joined an awesome organization. And I say that to you not to, give them a plug, but knowing them really well and knowing the leadership and the culture of that organization. We've actually had Jesper on here. He was our very first Game Changer interview, talking about his leadership and the culture that's been created there at Infoblox. So you've really joined an awesome organization. I'm sure you'll have a great year next year.
Yeah, and seeing Infoblox's response to COVID has also incredibly impressed me, and a part of the reason why I left my past organization, because of the more, I felt like Infoblox had taken a very good response to the whole pandemic. And I mean, I'm only 25 years old, so for me, it's way less socializing in these times and having more introspection, which I'm very grateful for.
Well, that's really good. What's your ID, Gabriella?
I actually don't know. I got an invite to the webinar, but I'm still in the process of setting up all of my everything in my Okta tiles. So I'll try to find my ID here soon.
Okay, good. Yeah, do that, because what we're going to talk about might help you learn some things. But as you go through and get inducted into the organization there, you'll get a lot more insight about your ID and those around you as well. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else who's a 9 or a 10? Greg, I saw you raise your hand. What are you today?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I'm up there.
Ah, good on you.
That's just where I live.
Good.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, it's interesting. I had someone say the other day, you know, we're talking about ID as an assessment tool, and they said it's really a way of life. You know, people that get into ID make a commitment to live to the best version of themselves, and the ID insights and strategies and like this type of, you know, community discussion is all part of that commitment of, just like people who go to a gym or work out, you know, somehow each day. It's a commitment that you make to continue to, you know, learn more about yourself so you can always be the best version of yourself. And some of the faces that are on this call, which I haven't seen for a while, Igor Pistolek, welcome, nice to see you. You guys have known ID for a long time. I mentioned before Ron Palmer, I mean, it goes back a long time, but, you know, clearly people say to me after years, even if we don't talk to each other, you know, for that length of time, it's still in their mind and they still think about their ID and those around them, because it is like a way of life that, you know, you've got now a tool and a language to stay in stride with who you are and to be the best version of yourself. And it's nice when you guys come back and, you know, catch up a little bit. Anyone else who had a real particularly high score, like a 9 or a 10?
Hi, Paul. I'm not a 9 or 10, but I'm an 8, and I know what I need to do to get to 9 or 10 in the next couple of weeks. So it's just more about raising my energy and being more physically active. That's really important for me to get out a lot more in nature. So, but yeah, just working on projects and a couple of things I've been doing, I've kind of cracked it. So I'm feeling much more in stride with all that.
So Susan, just for the benefit of the group, as a strong improviser, how does physical exercise and getting outdoors, how does that help you get more in stride? What is that giving you that allows you to get more in stride?
Yes, it just gives me much more energy and just release of any kind of emotion, a mental break from all my thinking all the time, because I'm constantly thinking. Yeah, and moving to music, because I love music as well. I'm a former dancer, classical ballet dancer, so it's ingrained in me. Pardon? Prove it. I could do a pirouette if you want, but so it's just ingrained. That's the way I kind of keep myself centered and balanced. Yeah.
Good.
Not that I'll be doing ballet in 2 weeks' time, but,
but see, this is the thing when you know your ID and you know what you need to do to get back in stride, not even get back in stride, you're already 8 out of 10. But this is the thing, it's like someone who gets to like a national level or some really high level in sport. When you get really good, you want to be even better. You know, when you get better, you want, you know, it's like a horizon that keeps pulling you forward. And 8 people who are 8 out of 10 want to experience 9 or 10. And when you've been a 10, you know what it feels like. And so you know, it almost like 8 becomes your floor, you know, and you don't go below an 8 type thing. But it's great when you then know what to do to get back to that, you know, to that higher number. And it's not just about you and what you know, how you live your best version of yourself. To me, it's more about what that then does for the people around you. You know, when you're exuding, you can't help but exude an incredible energy and like a shadow that helps everyone around you. And you don't have to try. When you're in stride like that, it's flowing through you, but it radiates out and helps other people around you. And I think equally, if you're at a particularly low score, it can radiate out a negative energy and flatten other people around you. So I think it's as much about being conscious of the effect you have on those around you as much as bringing the best out and having your best life.
And I think it is too also just taking that personal responsibility and remind yourself that, you know, to constantly keep on track with it, because you can get distracted. So it's, yeah, just being set on that.
Is there anyone that had a lower score or is not feeling on the game today and wants to mention that and maybe get a quick tip or two on how they might get back in stride?
Hey, Paul. I joined Infoblox a couple of months ago. My name is Shweta. So my score is 7562. I think it's improvise is the last. I mean, I think that's the lowest. So I just wanted to understand, or like, you know, I mean, how these, how I can, yeah.
Well, we'll cover some things today that can help you. You see Leonie nodding, you're very similar, Leonie, with your ID.
Yes. Interesting. I don't go below an 8. So I've never really felt like I'm below an 8. And I have been surprised by going lower recently with a family trip. And so it was very interesting not to panic about that and to not worry too much, but to just notice, try and be curious about it and not judge it, and to then think about, well, what do I need to do to get back to, because I know where I normally am. And so now it's a process of just managing that, of being aware of what will take me, away.
How good is that? I mean, just that you even know what good feels like and you know what you need to do so you can be in stride. I love the fact that you say you don't normally go below an 8. It's pretty powerful you're saying that, because people with your ID will often, even if things are an 8, they'll often focus on the 5% that's not right and say, well, I'm really only a 6 or a 7. So the fact that you give yourself the gift of being more positive about life and so on that way, I think is really neat. What do you do to stay there so consistently?
So I remind myself of who I am, I think. So it's a sense of valuing what I have and who I am, whether that's whether the experience is good or bad. It's the coming back to the sense of who I am. But it's also a strength of gratitude. So I like to be grateful. So I tend to have a tendency to do that. And that fuels that helps that as well.
That's really good. When you're clear on those principles, so with your ID 7752, and those of you like this, Swetha, this would be true for you too. When you feel on top and in control, and that you're, basically determining your own destiny, that's always going to help you be more in stride. So being clear about what you need, about what you care about in life, who you are, to Leonie's point, and you can see that and be clear on that, just that sense of you're in control of your own life, that's a great place to start from. When you're feeling out of control, pulled in all different directions, or overwhelmed by what's going on, and like you can't fix it, or you can't do anything about it, and it's out of your control, that's going to be a sure sign that you're going to be pulled out of stride. So, having that personal knowledge, and it does include knowing your values. So things like gratitude, where you go, well, I know that's a place I step back to get back in control. What can I be grateful of? And the minute you start having those types of conversations in your own head, it shifts you to a more positive number. Okay, if anyone got anything else they particularly want to share, otherwise we'll move on. Let's move on. So we had some questions that have been raised by people in the group. So Tiara, I put yours in here from what you raised when you registered. You can maybe talk to that in a minute if you wish, getting some input from the group. Sure. And then a couple of weeks back, another lady, I'm not sure if Cheryl's on the call today, but she asked this question about changing jobs. And then if we've got time, I've got some things about drive and behavior. I thought it might be a fun way to sort of have a discussion on Christmas activities and how we approach them with our IDs if we have enough time. So firstly, you did tell me before, is it Tiari? Is that how you say it?
Yes, Paul.
Tiari, is there anything you want to add to what we've got on the screen here in terms of your question?
No, I mean, I can ask the question to give some more framing as well.
Okay.
So in my organization, I'm changing from one people manager to another. I work in a tech industry, and so that the people manager that I joined this organization earlier in the year. That like relationship and that bond and everything that I've established is changing come January 4th. So my question is, what advice do you have in knowing my own ID and then transferring to someone who's will be managing me, and how to best communicate like how I am with how they are, and ask them for their ID, but like not in a crazy way, if that makes sense, like not in a weird way, and just have that discussion going forward.
Do you know the person's ID?
I do not, no.
Okay.
So that's the first question.
Okay. So there's a couple of things. And anyone in the group here can share things that you think could help Tiara going into a new role with her, particularly with her ID 6473. But what I will tell you is the fact that you work at Infoblox and everyone at the company is, that's right. Oh, no, you're at AWS.
No, I'm at AWS, not Infoblox, but tech nonetheless. Yeah.
Okay, no problem. Even at Amazon, there's a lot of people around you who have done their ID, and you can look up on the app, on our app, And if you're in that network, you know, if they've done it, just look up their name. If they've done it, it'll pop up and you can see it. But even if they haven't done it, just sharing your ID is a great first step. So, you know, what I would encourage you to do is to get a couple of the reports that are on your profile online, like the management strategies report or the collaboration report, and just share that with your manager and say, hey, if you'd like to know the best way, to get the best out of me, this is a great description of what makes me shine. And just share that with them. Presented not so it's for your benefit, even though obviously it will help you if they manage you that way, but so that it helps them, because any manager will tell you, like, I've hired this person and I believe in them and I want them to be successful, but it's normally a guesswork exercise to figure out how to set them up for success. And when you come along with a little instruction book that says, hey, here are the steps here, do these things, don't do these things, and your idea would be pretty clear on that, it's super helpful for them to get that sheet of paper from you that says, this is how to get the best out of me. I'd really encourage you, if nothing else, just to share that. But then secondly, once they've digested it, have a conversation around it. So don't rely on the piece of paper. Use the piece of paper, if you like, as the prompt for the discussion, but it's the conversation that follows where the gold is. And, you know, many of our clients have done exactly that. And it's just the fastest and best way they've ever started in a new role.
That makes sense, because it's, you know, it's sort of selfish in the sense that, I know what I am. Here's what I am, sharing that information with this new person. But also it's giving them, like you spoke about, giving them the opportunity to know, you know, not spend weeks or even months trying to figure out how I'm most efficient on the team or under their management or whatever the case may be. So yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You can see in the chat there, Greg made a comment about focus on what's not changing, as opposed to feeling like everything's changed around you, you know, and especially in a fast-paced, dynamic environment like at AWS. Is it AWS or Amazon that you're at?
I'm at AWS.
AWS, okay. So, I mean, particularly fast-paced. So it's very easy to get overwhelmed by how much is changing. So Greg's point about focus on what's not changing. One of the things that's not changing is you. You know, like, as in, be confident about what are the strengths you bring to the table. What were you even hired for? Just being a little bit like what Leonie said, going back to who am I? You know, and you might say, look, I'm a born organizer. You know, I'm someone that's really good at getting stuff done. That hasn't changed. You know, that's something I can count on. And having that confidence, because when you start getting distracted by what is changing, oh God, everything's new and I've got to learn this and I've got to learn that. The minute your confidence starts getting rocked, then it's going to, you know, really compromise how you're showing up. And the very things that you are normally a strength, you think, I don't know, I'm forgetting things and I'm making mistakes, you know, I'm not getting stuff done that I normally would. I'd normally fly through this stuff, but it's normally when your confidence gets rocked because you may be distracted by how much is changing rather than how much is staying the same, which is essentially what you bring to the table.
Makes
Paul,
sense.
could we check in with some of our serious up completes and see what they would say to Tiara?
Exactly, Greg. Who else, particularly someone who's got a similar ID to Tiari, who's like, you know, up, down in terms of the direction of your drives. And what would you, if you were starting a new role, have you done it in a way where you feel like this really worked for me? Maybe it was a discussion you had or something nuanced that could be helpful to Tiari?
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hey, Amanda.
Hey. Hi, Terry. Kind of similar ideas. My suggestion, you know, on top of what Paul and Greg said, is probably if you can do a review of what your current process is and how you go about your day-to-day, and maybe sit down with the new manager and say, hey, this is how I do my job and this is what I follow, and process and having a plan and having a list is important for me. Are you happy for me to continue doing like this? And just having that conversation, so then you can have your plan in place and know that, yes, the management is changing, but maybe the way you do things can stay the same, and having that upfront discussion to avoid any surprises later. I think that's a good idea.
That's excellent, Amanda. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you, Amanda.
Anybody else?
Hey, Paul, it's Igor. Can I add something?
Of course, Igor. Great to hear from you.
Yeah, I know. You made my day. I saw your invite. I saw I have a lunchtime or can have a lunchtime. And I thought, oh, why don't feel I 16 years younger today? Anyway, I do.
Good.
I want to say something. I have a phenomenal experience, life-changing experience with Paul and his methodology. And I am not here to advertise, but it's very true. Back to 2004. And what I want to say is that for me, the most benefit I got from Paul's methodology was not really talking to people who have the same profile, but understanding who's got a different profile and understanding how do I come across when I communicate with them. And the life-changing experience was I inherited a large team. I was doing my best. I was, you know, just basically killing myself to make everything work. Half a year into my management tenure, the team came back and they said, we don't trust Igor. He's hiding information from us. And I was absolutely gutted. I just could not understand how anyone can believe that I do that, because I'm the most open person in the world, I thought. Well, I've learned through Paul's team that, you know, high completers and high authenticators translated my behavior of sharing everything instantly. And as I'm authenticator, just to really go into the detail, but improvisers thinking a lot and trying to change things. They thought that I'm working behind the scenes for months and months, and then I'm just forcing them into something they're excluded from. The reality was that I was cooking things on a go. That small thing, thanks to Paul's team, changed my life in management. For the last 15, 16 years, I suddenly realized how I come across to certain people. So to conclude, you know, I found most beneficial looking at a people with a different profile and learning how I come across and explain to them how they should read me. Because it's not what you say, but it's about how you come across.
Yeah, that's really cool. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Igor. So for those who don't know Igor, he was a very senior leader at Cisco quite a few years ago, running some massive transformational initiatives there. And we had the privilege of working together and doing some really fun things together. And we haven't spoken to you now for a few years. So it's really nice to see you back here again. But it's so important what you're sharing. You know, it's so interesting. So the authenticate drive is the drive that we talk about people being, you know, straight shooters. And yet the number of authenticate leaders that the feedback around them is that they're a political animal. And I remember when I first got that feedback, I'm like, a political animal? How can the authenticator be a political animal? And one of the guys who was a client of mine, he was the CEO of a hospital, and he was seen as this political, you know, mastermind. And I'm like, but how? And what came out was he you know, doesn't want to sit behind his desk because being an authenticator, he wants to get up and walk around and go and experience the hospital, right? So he would go down to the receptionist and he'd go up and he'd say, oh, hi, Sally, how you going? How was your weekend? And he'd talk to the receptionist for a little bit, the CEO. And then when he would leave, other people would go up and say, what did he want? And she'd go, he was just checking to see how my weekend was. And they're like, no, seriously, you can tell me I'm a friend. What did he really want? And they're like, no, he was just talking to me. And they're like, okay, so you're in his group too then, you know? And it was incredible how rife all of this scandal got around this CEO. And he had no idea because he's just playing totally clean and thinking he's being a nice guy talking to everybody. But because they're like, but a CEO doesn't talk to the person on reception. So something else is going on. And it was all speculation. It wasn't reality. But to Igor's point, it's so helpful to understand, how does your ID completely innocently come across to other people for good and for bad, you know? And then sharing that. So to bring this back to Tiara's point, you know, going over and talking to your leader and explaining that to them saves them drawing the wrong conclusions. So I'm going to give you a tip, Tiara. The chances of you working for someone like you is probably really small. You know, they're probably someone really different, like maybe it's Igor, you know. And one of the things I would suggest would be good to get aligned on quickly, because your ID thrives on meeting expectations. And one of the first areas that can be misconstrued is how long are you a newbie for? You know, so your ID tends to take a while to warm up, get a feel for everything, get everything organized, get to understand not only my role, but everyone around me. So I look at how I fit into the jigsaw puzzle. So the concept of new might be, for example, 6 months, but you might be working for a leader whose concept of your new might be 2 weeks. Like Igor, if you were managing somebody with your ID, how long would you give them, you know, to sort of get acquainted and they're just new, you know, and then after that, you're expecting the rubber to really hit the road?
Yeah, 2 weeks would be stretch for me. I will just put the bullet points on the table and I say, this is how you should talk to me. This is what I want to know. And 20 years ago, I would say, you know, emotions, leave it at home. So Paul, again, thanks to you, you know, I'm complete number 3. I know I won't change it, but I'm forcing myself. So I think I'm man-made 5 now.
Right, right. Thierry, how long would you normally feel new for?
I would feel new for, I would say, at least 3 months to a team or something or a role. At least 3 months. Yeah.
Right. So you can see there's a massive discrepancy.
Yeah, exactly.
No one's right or wrong, but just because of your IDs, one person's 2 weeks. So you can imagine after 2 weeks, Igor's like, why is he making decisions? What are you going to be doing with your team? You know, looking for the quick wins and the immediate sort of impact. And you're feeling like you're still doing your stock take to get up to speed on everything, and then I'll come out to play. So just getting clear on that could really save your bacon. And it's not you can't produce results after 2 weeks, but you could reshape your plan to say, okay, what can I give after 2 weeks that's in my plan, that is a deliverable, that meets the needs of and expectations of my leader. So I'd say just getting aligned on how long does that person think of you as being new, and what are they expecting during that new period? Like they may not even want you to be making decisions in that time, or they may be expecting some. And then what about from the two weeks to 3 months phase? And then you can review after that. But getting clear so you can meet the expectations is a great way for you to get started.
Paul,
Thank you.
I just typed something, but I really want to say more. With your 7-3, Thierry, your drive is driven to sort of wait and be professional and not look like a whinger or a baby. You'll solve it yourself. All those reasons, you might have a lot of questions that you don't ask, and you get a little ticket, a free pass. And from Igor's old days, it would be a 2-week free pass. You can ask all the questions you want in this 2 weeks, and then your pass is revoked, right? So we would really encourage you, get out there now and be the new kid. Like, sorry, just so I can check in. Look, just checking. Did I get this right? Excuse me, did this? You know, you can be the goose. You got about 2 weeks to a month to be the goose. Then your questions, you go to someone that you can really trust that you don't want to look like the goose to. But don't hold back now, kiddo, because you'll just be stacking things and you'll be wishing you'd asked them earlier.
Thank you very much, Greg.
So great question, Thierry. And even those of you who've got a different idea to Thierry, I mean, the same principles apply, that when you think about new relationships, new roles, the sooner you can get to share your ID, and especially if you can learn about the person near you that you're working with, whether that's your boss or whether they're close colleagues, or obviously in a home environment, people you're living with, the sooner you've got that understanding, here's what happens. And there's research that's been done on this now with the Ohio State University, a lady called Laurie Kendall is leading it, where there's her hypothesis is that when people feel that someone gets you, and that's that they get you, it changes biochemically in the way you show up to other people, because there's a psychological safety that that you now experience with the person, which lowers the guard and allows you to just share and receive at a much more authentic level. And therein is the secret sauce that allows magic to happen. And she's doing the research with ID to prove that point. I think when she explained to me what she was doing, it's one of those experiences that I had where I almost jumped through the screen. You know, I just knew it was bang on. And so the more you can create that got you experience with the people that you're working with, like I get you and you get me, you are completely lubricating the ability to move forward at speed and with harmony. So it's a great question. I'm really glad you asked it. But you know, all of us can apply that. Okay, the second question, I won't worry about putting it back up on the slide so I don't distract you from seeing each other, was I'm curious if there are certain jobs that are better for different IDs than others. So for example, I use improvised people more successful and happier in support than avoid improvised people. Now that of course depends on what you mean by support, but I thought it would be an interesting conversation. It's the question that so many people have when they learn about ID. They want to know two things. Is there a certain type of relationship that suits me better than others? And I quickly look at their spouse to sort of see who they're already with and make sure you share that one, you know, kidding. But that's an obvious question, that am I with the right person based on my ID? And the second is, am I actually in the right role? Even if I love my role and I'm doing well at it, is there a role that would bring even more out from me, you know, that would allow me to shine even more? And I think what I thought would be interesting to share here is, has anyone had that type of experience where they've, you know, either been in a role that they were feeling suffocated and then they made a shift that it could have even been in a similar role. So say, for example, you're an accountant and you felt that you were being compromised and you moved and you did another accounting role and now you're really shining, same role, but something must have changed for you to shine. Or did you go from being an accountant to a farmer and that's what it took? I just thought this would be an interesting discussion for people to maybe talk about what was it that shifted? Is it the role that changed, like the role fundamentally changed from accountant to farmer or school teacher to salesperson or whatever it was? Or was it the other dynamics around the role that shifted, like working for a jerk leader and then working for someone who's a better leader? The role's the same, but the dynamic on you changes. So has anyone got anything they would share there that might be helpful?
I can answer the question directly because I did support. Paul, we haven't met. I'm Unity. I'm one of Greg's friends and students, however you want to see that.
Welcome, Unity.
So
nice
yeah, thank you. Yeah. So improvise is the last number, is it? Is it the yellow? It yeah. So I got a high yellow.
You do.
Yeah, abstract, creative, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, and I dabble a lot with AWS, Tiari, by the way. Anyway, so I did support starting out in my career in IT, many support jobs in various different companies. I hated it. I can't tell you how much I hated it. And you could say, yeah, it was the role, it was the work, but what I boiled it back to, you could say it was the people. What I boiled it back to is quite simple. It's just that the way my mind works, which I guess you could say is the ID, is very unsuited for repetitive, laborious, same thing every time, many times a day, week, year. And instead, I just needed freewheeling creativity. And once I did change that role, it was heaven.
Yep.
So I'll offer that up as one data point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So were you in the same role and changed the way you did the role, or you changed roles?
I did try that. I tried everything.
Right.
Yeah.
True to form.
Yeah, and I even tried, so I was in one of these kind of roles for a year or two, and I re-engineered the whole processes that me and some of the others on the team did in an attempt to introduce that creativity, a different way of doing the same thing. And once that creativity was over and those processes were in place, I hated it. So in the end, it was definitely the nature of the work was unsuited to someone like me with a high improvise.
Yes.
And changing roles immediately fixed it. Changing people sort of made it easier to bear, but it was still suffering.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
you raise another interesting point, which is in the life cycle of a role, the newness of the role when you're creating and innovating and getting it all started, like breathing. Your idea is wide more at the getting started stage, and then once it's all set up and it's more around either maintaining it or finessing it or the ongoing execution. The same role that used to really jazz you and was really fulfilling will wear off quickly as it becomes more.
Yeah, I noticed that as well. So I've got a two week window where things are new and I can survive on that. And then I need to quit every job that's like that after 2 weeks, which wasn't financially viable.
But it plays to the point that you need a lot of variety, you need the excitement, and a smart leader working with you would know to keep things juicy. It doesn't mean you've got to change roles or relationships every 2 weeks, but you need something new often. I remember one leader one time, I said, it was someone with like the person reporting to them was someone like you, Unity, and he said, oh, that's good. So he thrives on a big challenge. And I said, absolutely. So, oh, that's good, because I've given him a big challenge. It'll keep him going through to like the middle of next year. And I'm like, no, you gave him a big challenge. It'll keep him going through till about the middle of January, you know?
Yeah.
Like, and it was interesting because he had an ID that was more like Tiari. So we were just talking about more long-term, people with a long-term mindset. And so it's not that the role would be finished by the middle of January, but the newness, the excitement factor is going to start wearing off pretty quickly. And so he got the tip then to keep injecting new energy, new oxygen into that role to keep that person enthused all the way through.
Yeah, so I moved to project-based, which is similar to what you're saying. It's like, you know, it might be a 3-month project, might be a 6, it might be a 2, who knows? And that was better.
Really good. That's really good. By the way, the more your day can then also be unpredictable, like if, as you started today, if someone said to you, say, Unity, what have you got on today? And you went, you know what, I don't really know. You know,
that is what I say. Yeah.
that's
I don't know, and I don't want to know, and I don't care, because it's going to happen spontaneously and it's going to be awesome. So that's the drive. Greg's giving me this kind of stuff. That's right. The drive. Perfect. And that is how I am. So funnily enough, I actually deliver about 10 times more than what people expect if that drive is allowed to flourish. But if you try and squash it down into that support kind of idea, like here's a task, do a task to give me that little bit of output, do that 100 times in a row, and then you'll deliver a big output. It's actually not true. You actually only get a little bit of stuff compared to what would happen if you let the drive flourish.
And although you say things, and we all say things sort of rather colloquially, like, you know, they'll get 10 times the output from me. You could have, your mind says that, and we almost don't hear it because it sounds like such an exaggeration. But when you actually stop and reflect on what you achieve, I'm saying this to everyone on the call, you know, you didn't say they get 5% more, they get 10% more. When organizations study productivity, you hear them say things like, oh, this initiative we did, it got an extra 5 or 7% productivity out of the organization. Like that was a big win. We are all so sub-optimized in how we do things that there's room for orders of magnitude in improvement in how we perform. And it is things like 10 times, you know, when someone with Tiari's ID, listen to this, and we've not had this conversation, and Amanda, this would be true for you. If you think about a day that you're going to have where there's lots of interruptions, like a day that would Unity would shine in, and if you were getting interrupted like that versus going off and working on your own without interruptions, what's the difference in your productivity?
I've worked in organizations before that are very interruptive like that in the sense of the day. So if I know that, if my day is going to be crazy or, you know, very interrupted, I know to expect that and then just roll with it in the moment, and then know that I'll add an hour onto my day to accomplish sort of an uninterrupted time to accomplish what I really need to on that day. It's sort of when I don't know what's coming my way that's more challenging, and then when I realize, oh, okay, it's pardon, like a shit show today, like, okay, let's just roll with it, let's continue on. So yeah, that's how I deal with it, at least.
If you don't know the interruptions are coming, what's the difference in productivity for you?
Decrease overall.
Yeah. So we get told by completers it's about 4 times. So when they can work without interruptions in a 2-hour window, they'll get done the equivalent of what they do in a normal day. Like that hour that you tack on at the end of the day, Tiara, you probably get done in an hour about what you would have got done in the bulk of the day. You know, it's just incredible what you get done when you can focus and not be interrupted. And so when leaders don't know that, they can be inadvertently asking you things off the cuff, thinking that, well, you report to me, so therefore you need to respond. And your drive for harmony says, oh, okay, I'll drop everything and accommodate you now. So you take the interruption, not realizing necessarily that it's compromising your productivity like by 4 times or more. So we're talking orders of magnitude impact on productivity, up or down, depending on whether people work in stride or not. And as leaders and you know, people in relationships, understanding the effect we then have on others and their productivity, and obviously fulfillment is the same thing. It's a huge issue, you know, to try and then how do we work at this role or relationship so that we both shine and we're both giving 10 times to you know, Unity's point before. Okay, what anyone else with
Sorry.
example of
Sorry, Paul. I am that accountant in your example, and I have had many jobs.
How's the farm?
Sorry?
How's the
It's
farm?
it's terrible. And it's funny now because I've just finished my law degree, and you would think law and accounting are pretty similar.
Yeah.
And now I'm petrified of going back into a role like that because I know eventually I will want to work by myself. And, you know, Tiari's examples, you know, I have to be supervised for 2 years and all that jazz. But I am petrified going back into that really, like Unity was saying, task orientated, lots of control, lots of pressure. You know, they don't treat you particularly well. And I don't know, it's almost, I don't want to do it, but I know I have to do it to go work for myself. Like I know this is where I'm driving because I know that like Unity, I need a lot of variety. I don't want to work on a law, you know, or an accounting transaction for 3 years. That's not me. I've worked big, I've worked small, I've worked everywhere. And I don't know, I'm sort of in a place where I'm like, I need to do it to get it done because I'm a big completer and I am 100% more efficient by myself. You know what you need to do, you get it done, you solve the problem. And I'm a bit like Igor too. I'm that, you know, authenticator that talks to people and someone walks past the meeting room because someone's having a bad day and they want to talk to you about it. And then you've got a partner saying to you, what are you talking to them about? We need to reduce our meeting hours and these indiscretional meetings because we need productivity. And you're like,
Well, it might be a longer conversation, but are there any tips that anyone would have for Sally to share with her on how much you deal with that situation?
Yeah, can my 8 speak? My 8 is screaming out here, right, for your, one of the things to be the shift, because you're just a punk, Sally, you're so young, you got a great chance to move into this area. You got to move from being the task being your focus to enrolling others as being your focus. You can do the job by yourself with your hands tied and a blindfold on, but you want to move into the idea that, yeah, that's great, I can do that, but how do I influence others to do it? And let that be your measure of success, is their success. And therefore, they're crazy things, the questions they ask, the annoyance they go, that's just the next thing you got to fix for them to be able to take over from you. If you can keep your eye on what they need to be good and not what you need to be good, I think you're going to transform from being a great worker to a great leader.
okay, thank you.
I would just add, Sally, stay focused on the picture. Whatever you've got a clear picture as an authenticator, if you've got a clear picture that you're driving towards, you can almost handle anything along the way. There are many people that have done university degrees and have said, you know, I don't like the degree, like I don't like going to university and studying, but I am so driven to want to be that dentist, or I want to be that architect, or I want to be that, you know, scientist, whatever it might be. They've got their focus on the prize. And it's not the money they'll earn, it's whatever they're going to be doing when they're in that role. So if you want to be, what is your vision? Do you want to be like a practicing lawyer? What is it?
Yeah, I want to be a practicing lawyer in tax estate planning.
In a courtroom, or in what do you see?
No, a lot of tax is out of court these days. Tax estate planning, sort of helping people during their life and then after they pass away.
Beautiful. So picture yourself in consultation with clients. Like, that's where I'm going to be shining. And whatever I'm doing now is on my way to learning that. So even doing things that you don't like today, that's building resilience. It's not a waste of time. It's building your resilience so that when you have experiences with customers you don't like, doing work you don't like, which we all have from time to time, you'll have the mental muscle to handle that really well. But stay focused on the picture that is going to be you really in stride, not too far away.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, Paul, Steve here. I got one comment. I've been in a working career about over 40 years, and I've done a number of roles from sales, both in new business and account management. I make that distinction because one is a hunter, one is a farmer sort of concept, and I've moved into operations. So I've early days understood how my personality worked. So I use the strengths to actually do those jobs because I find new business really, really difficult. So I used the strength of personality, but in later years and understanding drives and other things, I've moved into operations role, and I did that about 7 years ago, made a career shift. So looking back over all of that, the ingredients, I think it's, you find where the level of frustration or the level of anxiety, I suppose, and lack of feeling valued has been the things that which have pushed me to sort of move around in different roles. So I sort of say, I believe you can do any sort of role within your skill set, but you find the level of enjoyment, the level of achievement, the value you feel, and something you talked about last week about being contented. If you feel like at the end of the day you've contented, well then whatever role you're doing, that's the niche, which is something you can flourish in. And like the others, I value variety. Now, being a high completer, I've had to learn to not just focus on completing something, but getting something done, keep it moving, keeping a number of things. So I've increased capacity to keep the variety going. But it's come down to my level of contentment, enjoyment, satisfaction, and doing that in whatever role it is. So I see myself as my skill set's quite transportable, so irrelevant of the role at the end of the day.
That's really good, Steve. Thank you for sharing that. I will just say that you sort of give me this picture of Moses right now, you know, with this white beard and white hair and this shining light behind you. It's like I'm talking to some, you know, real guru.
Well, sorry, that's my nickname, so sorry about that.
No, I ran into your daughter the other day. I didn't realize there was a connection. That was incredible.
Yes, that's why I was asking Mark about those questions about tribe, because I know Mitch quite well, who worked with Mark.
There you go.
Yes.
All right. You know, what I will say to you, maybe to wrap up this question on, is it more around the job or is it the environment around the job? There are so many people that have job hopped in search of finding a better nirvana, you know, and ultimately the ones I would say who have done best, you do need to find a role that meets your needs, but so often it's the more you can master. I remember one of the leaders at Cisco years ago, someone was saying to him, well, it's all right for you now, you're really in stride, but you're in a really senior executive position, and you know, it's just the right role for you now that you're there and, you know, earning great money and yada, yada, yada. And he was like, no, it's not that I'm this lucky person in the right role. I've just learned how to engineer everything about the role to suit my ID, you know, and he's someone that was a strong improviser. And so he needs it to be fun and exciting and positive energy. And so he's looked at all the things that used to drive him nuts and gone, right, how do I reshape this so it's now going to be fun? So meetings that he used to sit through the whole time, now he set them up so that the team would he'd be involved in the brainstorming, but when they got involved in all the detailed planning, he'd leave and come back at the end just to hear what the executive summary was. You know, meetings that used to be scheduled for half an hour automatically, he converted to 5-minute meetings, you know, or he'd bring other people into those meetings. So it made it more exciting and interactive. So by understanding your ID, I'd say there's a lot of room in both roles and in relationships, because I have had people say to me, so Paul, with my need for variety, am I just not going to be able to have a committed relationship? Like, am I going to need to move relationships every like 6 months or a year? I mean, it's never worked for me till now. And I'm so tempted at the time to say to them, yep, I'm sorry, that's exactly how it's going to be, you know? And here's the list of all the people I'm going to talk to. But no, there are people who are like ones and twos incomplete, who have had marriages and beautiful marriages for 40 and 50 years, but they've learned how to have the variety and the fun and the excitement, but they've had to sometimes consciously do that, you know, rather than just assume that it's going to come to them for free. All right, now we're right near the end of the call, and I did promise a gift, a Christmas gift. And I, you know, I thought to myself, given the whole community spirit of what has happened through this year with so many of you, I tell people we've got these like ID celebrities, you know, who have been on the call, all different IDs, but have come, most of you or many of you have come like every week, and it's become a real part of our weekly routine almost, you know, and it's exciting for me too. And I first and foremost want to say thank you to you all for the way you've kept me so energized through what could have been a really challenging time. And it's been an honor and a real privilege for me to give back whatever I can every week. But when I thought about what's the best Christmas gift I could give, and I don't know what all of you have done here, but I would like to offer every one of you on this call 5 IDs for free on me to use with your family and friends. Whoever you consider could get the most value from this, you know, whether they're people in your immediate family that would just make your family rock by having more of a language around understanding each other, or whether they're people that you maybe know, siblings or close friends who either are doing well but could do better, or maybe are struggling, and this could be great for them to have more personal insight into themselves. At the end of this call, Ian's going to send you all an email with the link. Now, the way we're going to set this up so that it works is it's one link that you will all get. And we're just going to rely on trust and honesty that people won't use more than 5. And I'm completely comfortable with that. So if you just use 5, so use it either, you know, send a link to different people or send it to one group of people. But the link will stay live until the 17th of January. So you've got a month to use it. And for those of you who do use all 5, I'll give you a New Year's gift when we start up again next year, because my desire is that you actually use it, not that you don't. Like our vision is for everyone in the world to know and use their ID. I'm not interested in people just getting links and not using them. It's actually in the spirit of our vision and our mission that people would learn more about themselves through ID, and not just learn it, but start to use it. And I'd love some of those people, and please tell them about these calls every week, because they get to come along and hear more about the ID, but from people like you that are using it and putting it in your day-to-day plain English language of how you relate to it and what you can do from it. And it is something that sets the ID apart, because most people, when they do other sorts of tools like this, it's a one-off experience. It's not something that becomes a language and a way of life. And if you can introduce people to start thinking this way, I think it's one of the best ways for you to contribute to making a difference. So that's my gift to you. Please take it, use it. And if you use all 5, I will have another gift for you, and it won't be the same. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'm challenging myself to have something that's different for you that will help you build on that platform and be able to have that community. I know those of you who do have your own little community, whether it's family and friends that have got their ID, it helps you keep it alive because you're thinking of it all the time. But there's no question that those who do this have a better life around them, because everyone, you and the people around you, are more and more in stride. And what a great gift to give to the people around you at Christmas time. So with all of that, Merry Christmas. We still say Merry Christmas in Australia, but to all of you elsewhere in the world, it is a holiday time. But from my family to yours, and from all the Link Up and ID family, I'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas, a very safe New Year celebration, and a wonderful 2021. I think all of us are looking forward to 2021, but frankly, when we look back on 2020, it doesn't turn out to be near as bad as we maybe thought it could have been. So have a great break, have a fun time with your families, and I look forward to seeing you back here again as we kick off in January, and we'll be in touch with you again at that time. Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you. Merry Christmas, everyone.
Merry Christmas. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Paul. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. See ya.
Thanks, guys. Happy Christmas.
Bye.